Okay, cool. And we're live. Off you go, Sonia.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you all very much for joining another Nash Talks, the series of talks that we kicked off at the beginning of lockdown, where at this point we've covered everything from mental wellness to homeschooling to nutrition for the immune system. For the next two, we focus on a topic very close to our hearts, diversity and inclusion. It's a journey that we're going on in our own business, and it's something that we've advised some of our clients on how to build better practices into the recruitment process from a diversity and inclusion perspective. And obviously, societally, it's a question that we're asking ourselves a lot at the moment. How can we support the Black Lives Matter movement? Are we going to have a more inclusive society at the end of all of this with more openness to remote working? And I'm looking forward to discussing all of these topics with Siobhan today. Siobhan, thank you so much for agreeing to participate today. Siobhan has spent 2 years working on AIB's journey, and from talking to her recently, she's just so proud of everything that they have achieved. One of the things that struck me at the beginning of lockdown was AIB allowing all partners of healthcare workers to just focus on homeschooling their children while receiving full pay, which I thought was amazing. They've also allowed Siobhan a secondment to her role as Director of Diversity and Inclusion for the Open Doors initiative. Open Doors focus on providing opportunities to marginalised members of society, from asylum seekers to young adults with educational difficulties and disabilities. She's also doing a thesis at the moment that I'm dying to read when it's done. Diversity and inclusion, is it altruism or a 21st century business imperative? For today, Siobhan is going to talk to us about her passion for diversity and inclusion, and really just how to kickstart that journey in an organisation. So once again, Siobhan, thank you so much, and over to you.
Thanks a million, Sonia. I'll get my slides up here now, and hopefully I can share them with you. Oh, I think I'm having some technical difficulties in terms of trying to share my slides with the participants. Okay.
It should work for you there now.
Okay, super stuff. Brilliant. Thanks, Patrick. So thank you everybody for taking the time to dial in today. As Sonia said, I've spent 14 years in AIB, where my most recent role was leading out on diversity and inclusion for the organisation. During that time, I had the privilege of being involved in a number of great initiatives. Since January of this year, I moved into the role as Director of Diversity and Inclusion and Development with the Open Doors initiative, where we worked with marginalised groups to try and get them into employment and create employment paths. So today I'm going to talk to you about my role and what I've done in terms of diversity and inclusion, what that means to me, and then hopefully at the end of that conversation then we can have loads of questions and have a very interactive Q&A. So I'm just going to move on to my second slide. So I know that diversity and inclusion means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So that's why I wanted to put the definitions here in terms of what they mean to me as we go through this conversation. I know we're going to use the terms a lot. So diversity to me is embracing any sort of difference, whether that's diversity of thought, sexual orientation, religion, your background. It's bringing difference to the table. And inclusion for me is really where the belonging piece comes in. Inclusion is where you can be yourself, where you feel safe, where you feel welcomed, and where you feel that you can be treated really equally. We know from all of the reports that are currently out there, whether it is you log on to social media and you can see the benefits of diversity and inclusion. And I think for me, in the roles that I've had to date, I've witnessed them firsthand. In terms of diversity, I can see when you manage diversity correctly, it brings creativity, it brings innovation, it brings problem solvings to the mix. We're reflecting our society that we serve. Even if you look at Ireland and the demographics that are here now, we're such a diverse population that if we want to grow as a company and create more market share, we need to be replicating those customers that we're serving. And then in terms of growth and profit that I talked to. Also from an inclusion side, and if we're doing this really, really well, our staff will feel that they belong in the organization, that they can be their whole selves, turn up to work every day being the best that they can be. They feel respected, committed, motivated. And most of all, I think they feel that they're part of the organization, mission and values. And I think that's what all organizations want. They want to get the best out of their staff. That's why they're there. That's why they were hired. We hire the best talent into our organizations. So I think that inclusion piece for me really comes first in terms of making people feel that they belong, making people feel that they can be authentic and be themselves every day when they come into the office. And I think that's something that we can talk through in the next few slides that I'm going to look at. So where do I commence my diversity and inclusion? I know that some people on the call are probably well into their diversity and inclusion roadmap, their strategy, and they know where they want to go. And then there's other people that are probably just starting out on their diversity journeys. So if I was to give any advice at all in terms of where to start, and to start with the employees that you currently have within your organizations, I would firstly look at leadership. Leadership and sponsorship is huge when it comes to this agenda. You need to have the backing of a sponsor or somebody on your executive team to bring this to life for you. Because I know without doubt that you're going to have massive presence when it comes to the bottom line and staff wanting to get involved in this journey. But it's really, really important that you have a sponsor or a leader that can bring this to light during conversations that the bottom line are not present at. During those boardroom conversations, it's important that diversity and the work that's been done on the bottom line is brought to those conversations and is kept in the mix. And for me, that's probably one of the most important things. One of the other considerations that I would say if you're starting off is look at your business case and why are you doing this? I find this fascinating, especially as Sonia said, I'm doing my thesis at the moment. And as I read into academia and the different journals that are available on this topic, it's really, really interesting. The staff that you have within your organizations, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, you hired them for a reason. And I'm guessing that's because they're the best person for the job. And in saying that, they're going to want to know, why are we embarking on this journey now? Are we taking an action because of what we see in society going on right now with Black Lives Matter and that campaign? Is it because of a regulatory perspective that we're embarking on this journey? Because we know that the central bank will be after us if we don't. Is it because you believe in the business case behind D&I? Or is it because you feel it's the right thing to do? I think as a team, as an organization, you need to be clear in terms of the business case and the reason why you're choosing to embark on this journey now. And then I think what goes hand in hand with that is the comms. I think it's really important in terms of the different areas that you have in your organization when it comes to comms, whether that's your internal comms team, your marketing team, your CSO, your D&I, that you've come together, that it's a holistic journey, that you're creating one voice for the organization in terms of the direction that you're going here. Because the last thing that you want to do is create this work behind the scenes or come up with a strategy, come up with a direction, and then you don't execute that properly with the staff in the organization. If you're embarking on this journey, you want to make sure that you're starting from a really good place. And in doing that, you need to have transparency around the messages that you're going to portray to your staff within your organization. You need to be thinking about then, I think once you have those few actions in place in terms of your sponsor that you have, the person that's going to advocate this for you at the top level. You need to be thinking about who is going to bring this to life for you on a day-to-day basis. Now, I'm working with a number of organisations that we have signed up through the Open Doors initiative, and I'm working with them on their strategies around this topic. A lot of the organisations tend to have employee resource groups, or else squads, they can be known as squads or task forces. And they're the day-to-day champions of this and the people that bring the strategy to life. So that's something that you need to consider in terms of what way are you going to ask staff to be involved in this journey? How are you going to get those champions from the bottom line involved on a day-to-day basis? So from an AIB example I might give you, something that we did in 2017 was we went out to all of our staff throughout the organisation, so over 10,000 staff at that time, and we asked them what are the areas that they would like to focus on. So out of that survey, they came back with 6 areas of focus that they would like to look at. So we set up 6 employee resource groups. Men matters, women matters, family matters, prides matters, roots matters, and ability matters. For all of those groups, then people could sign up who wanted to. You could sign up for all 6 if you wanted, or you could sign up across certain areas where you had a specific interest. And those groups then came up with their own strategy in terms by themselves and with their sponsor, and that was the executive from our leadership team that was involved in this. So they came up with a strategy on the areas that they would like to focus on for our organisation that they thought could benefit staff. And this was really powerful because it not only had the bottom line being involved and thousands of staff being signed up to the different employee resource groups to have their voice heard, but also by having the executive sponsor on board, it really brought what we were doing to a whole other level. And with that, I would think about how would you like to see your employee resources continuously grow? So I would have your milestones in place in terms of what you want to achieve. And I think that we will get to now in a few minutes, maybe what success looks like and how you know that you're on the right track. What I would consider is if you're setting up your task forces or your employee resource groups. With the task force, I know some organisations are just going out to all of their staff in their organisations and asking them who has particular interest in this topic. And then the people that come together, then they look at different initiatives that they want to organise for their organisation. And out of them, then people volunteer for different areas that they'd like to focus on. So I think that's 2 ways that you could potentially look at bringing diversity and inclusion to life on a day-to-day basis. One of the things that I would say is with COVID-19 and everything being remote for the time being, I would consider definitely making sure that everybody feels included and everybody feels heard in terms of the staff that you have dialing in to take part in these conversations. It can be sometimes hard and it can be challenging for people when they're dialing in remotely. So just make sure that you are listening to everybody's voices, that everybody has enough airtime, that they feel that psychological safety, that it is a safe space to be themselves and for them to contribute, I guess, to the best of their ability and to share ideas that they know could make an impact for their organisation. So in terms of getting started, I would say I have a couple of things here that I've picked out that I think are good starting places. So your purpose, and for me these are your focus areas. So if you are only starting, you're probably on your awareness journey, and that comes to the whole comms the whole comms part where I talked about, and making sure the staff in your organization know where you're going with this, that they're aware that they're being brought on the journey with you from the very start, that it's not just coming from the top down and arrived through an email in everybody's inbox. I think that you need to work together, whether that's with your internal comms team, whether it's with your D&I team or your task force, and make sure you come up with an authentic message, your business case almost, in terms of why you're starting off this journey. After that, then I think it comes to the support piece, and that will probably come from either your task force or your D&I. And what do they need, first of all, from their sponsor? There's going to be a number of things that they will look for and need guidance on. And then in terms of embedding it in the organization, how are you going to go about doing that? So there are definitely, in terms of focus areas and your purpose of starting off this journey, they are definitely the 3 things that I would have in mind. I talked about the organization and the different teams that you have. And I think it's so important, especially probably in bigger corporations, that you have a holistic view of where you're going, and that it's not done in piecemeal, that the different teams that you have within your organization, or even the D&I team and the task squad, are talking to each other. That's really important even from a calendar perspective, that you make sure that your events or your initiatives, that they're spaced out, that not everything is happening in the one day. It's making sure that, I guess, the staff from both the bottom line and the top really know what you're doing, that you've thought about this plan, and it comes into the strategy of the organization and fits in with your overall, your mission and your values of the organization. And I think that's something that you really need to think about, that your sponsor needs to be involved in, and that's very much an open discussion. Then another one is your partners that you have. So I know a lot of companies, they work with third parties. When I was in AIB, I worked with DCU and their access program. I worked with the Open Doors Initiative. I worked with the Centre of Diversity. So I know that there's lots of partnerships going on in organizations. I would make sure that you have a holistic picture in terms of all of the partnerships that you have going on, that you know where you're going to focus your intention, and again, that they align to your North Star on where you're going within your organization. And then I think one of the most important things is your targets. What targets are you setting for yourself to know that you're succeeding? What are you measuring as you go along to know that you're making progress in this area? And that's so important, because we can end up being busy fools. We really need to focus on, where are we getting our bang for our buck? What do our staff want? And then how does that translate into a target for our organization, that we know that we can repeat it again, and we know that we can invest in it again when it comes to budget. I don't know how I'm doing for time now, but this is probably one of the last slides that I'm going to talk to, where I can kind of wrap everything up into terms of what we've been talking about to date. And I feel like that time just went really, really fast. A couple of things to be mindful of when you go and embark on this journey is, make sure that you're collaborating along the way. I know I couldn't have done half the work that I achieved without the support of our HR team in AIB. They're an absolutely amazing team. The wellness advocates that we had across the organisation. So there was a huge amount of collaboration involved to bring everything to life. Again, if it's coming to your own organisation and doing things to bring into motion, I would think about your talent. What sort of a talent pool do you have? What sort of a talent pool do you want to get to? Are you currently working on that at the moment? And I would look at that and I would say, are we a homogeneous team? Do we all think the same? Do we all look the same? Is it the same sort of responses coming back in our meetings on a continuous basis? And do we want to continue on that trajectory? I think it's even bringing it back into your talent acquisition team and having a look at the hiring managers, and who is it that's hiring on a daily basis? Have they been through the unconscious bias training? What does that look like? Is your hiring team made up of diverse candidates? Is there candidates from minority backgrounds? Because they're going to be the people that spot other candidates coming through that might need a chance or might need an opportunity. In terms of structural initiatives, I would look at your policies and procedures and what you have. Do you have a diversity and inclusion policy in place? That's something very simple that you can bring to life as you start this journey. Look at through your employee resource groups, you might want to focus on different policies to be more inclusive. There's a couple of ideas if you want to go down that route that I could maybe talk to you about later. Something very inclusive as well that you could do around structural initiatives is maybe look at rolling out a workplace passport. And normally reasonable accommodations or workplace passports are given to people with disabilities. But make it really inclusive in terms of what you're doing, and why not give that and share that with everybody in terms of your organizations, because we all have commitments. For some people, it might be that they want to make sure that they get out on time every day because they have kids to go home to. And for other people, they might want to disclose to you more in there. So again, it's building a culture of real inclusion, building a culture of where you feel comfortable. I know we talked about measurement already, and setting targets for yourself to know that you succeed. Also a big thing in all of this that you're doing is to know your budget in terms of the employee resource groups and the tasks that you're working with, and make sure that you're very transparent in terms of them, that they know from the get-go what they have to work with and what they don't. And then overall, I think that your brand is really it's brand affinity that you're adding to with your diversity and inclusion here. Whether that comes to the employees that you have, your stakeholder makeup, and then the customers that you serve. And lastly, I think I'm just going to end on the note of saying that it's very much a journey that we go on. While you do have targets in place and you can see your success and measure that as you go along, I think every day we learn new things, whether that's me reading academic journals or working with organizations to get hints and tips on what they're doing differently. It's a journey, but the more diverse people that you have in the mix, I think that allows you to create that open dialogue and keep that flowing. So I think I'll stop talking, and maybe Sonia, we might open it up to some questions before we run out of time.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Siobhan. There are so many different definitions of diversity and inclusion. Two new ones today. Like, I love diversity bringing difference to the table, because it's so broad and it's not being fully defined. Yeah. And then inclusion, be your whole self, feel part of the mission. Lovely. I also love the idea of squads. What I'd just love to know is what would be the typical number of people in the squad, and like how long the duration of being in the squad is, and typical actions if you were to just pick one squad.
Yeah, I would make sure, so typical is normally a year and a half, and then definitely change it up after that. Bring fresh ideas into the mix all of the time, or if people leave because they don't have the capacity anymore, make sure that you change that up and you're constantly bringing new people into the table. Might talk to a squad of family. I know carers specifically, it's a specific topic at the moment. I think that we're all facing, whether that's with family or children that we're looking at. I think really bringing practical policies into place for your organization that they can concentrate on that. And through some of the work that we would have done, we would have focused on making a will, something that people mightn't think of. We looked at IVF and what people might want to, discounts for our staff in that area, and also more education for our staff. So we looked at buddy benches and we brought them into schools for children. So there's so much that you can do. And it depends how far you want to go with that. I would say start off in small steps and then build it out as you go.
Wow, brilliant. Thank you. We have a question here from the group. Can you please share some of the best or most unique D&I ideas for talent acquisition you have come across to date?
For talent acquisition, yeah. I think it's looking at the language that we use. For me, I found it great coming from the corporate world, I guess, and being so used to the language that we have in our job ads, that people from minority groups, and I'm going to talk to the three that I work with at the moment. So they're refugees, asylum seekers and migrants, people with all disabilities and disadvantaged youth. they mightn't feel that they can apply for some of these jobs in some of our firms and in some of our organizations just based on what way the ad is put up and what way the ad looks like. I think that we just need to think about and we work with a lot of organizations in terms of the way they even write their job ads and what that looks like. Make sure that we use really, really inclusive language when we're advocating our roles. Make sure that they know that we can make reasonable accommodations if that's needed. Let them know that if there is flexi leave available, remote working from home, that they can avail of those things. I think it's just being open-minded, and also there's some really great candidates that we've been working with, some from marginalized groups, and they're highly skilled in terms of masters, doctorates. So I think it's also knowing your third parties and where to tap into for that talent as well.
Brilliant, thank you. I guess I'd love to get your views on, you know, what's happening in the world at the moment and how organizations can support the Black Lives Matter movement more.
Yeah, I think that there's a huge amount of hurt going on in the world now, a huge amount of pain, sadness. I think people don't know how to react. And I think that the place where organizations can start with that is having conversations with their staff, not claiming to know all of the answers, because I don't think that we expect anybody to know all of the answers or how to deal with this straight away. As I even said, talking about diversity and inclusion, it is very much a journey in everything that we do. But there is a time in our lives where we have all felt excluded, and whether that's been not being invited on a night out, whether that's not being invited to a wedding, I think that exclusion has applied to everybody, not just Black people or mixed race people. I think that if senior executives and if leaders in our organizations could open up more roundtable conversations where they bring everybody together, probably on a more in smaller groups at the start, and they have those open conversations around, talk to me about a time where you felt excluded. That's opening up the conversation for everybody in the organization and not just singling out Black people or mixed race people. And I think that will grow the platform for people to become more, hopefully to feel more inclusive, to feel like that their voice is being heard. And then I think that can lead on to further conversations in terms of if organizations want to find out if that particular person in their organization has witnessed racism or has been a subject to that. I think it's just opening the door to that conversation and not ignoring it, and being comfortable about being uncomfortable, I think, is the most important thing.
Yeah, there's certainly people not quite understanding how to articulate how they're feeling about it at the moment is the sense I get, but you know, mostly 100% on board to supporting where they can, not knowing how.
Yeah.
So
but I think that can be the hardest part then, if the two parties on either side don't say anything to each other. I think then that the staff members just feels like, oh my God, my organization is not actually saying anything to me. They're not acknowledging what's going on in the world. And then there can be an awkwardness created from that. I think it's better to say something and apologize if it's wrong rather than not say anything at all.
Very true, very true. Thank you so much. I think the work that you and Jan do in the Open Doors Initiative is absolutely amazing, and certainly love being involved in it. And you know, Siobhan, just to let you all know, so at the beginning of this call, if any of you want more support or more information on any of these topics, she's certainly willing to share more. So thank you for that. Yeah. We are, you know, we've a real part 2 to this talk next week. So if you want to hear more about how to bring your strategy to life, you should definitely tune in to Jean McDonough's talk next Thursday, which will talk more about the Open Doors Initiative and all of the work that Siobhan and Jan are doing. So thank you very much. Really appreciate your talk today. There's loads of takeaways from me, personally, even in our own business. As I said, we're on the journey, and we're definitely getting squadded up straight after this, because there's so many people that want to help, and I wasn't able to picture how to structure it. So this makes absolute sense. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Sonia. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.